Alright, before I introduce this video, bear with me, people. My allergies have been acting up a little bit, so just bear with me. Hello, this is Max Plagueis, and today's lesson is called Antichrist Archetypes. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize this, but there are characters in the Bible that actually have the similarity characteristics of what the Antichrist will have. So, for many years, people have pointed to people that they think are the Antichrist, only they have been wrong. If they'd simply looked to the Bible, it would have provided the answers. This is how you will know when the Antichrist will show up. There are 18 figures in the Bible, through 6 plus 6 plus 6, that give you the clues to the Antichrist. Now look for these clues. Okay, the first one is Cain. He was born of the serpent, as it says in 1 John, the wicked one. He's a murderer. He takes the mark, or takes a mark, just like the mark of the beast, and he begins religious practices, salvation by works. Cain offered the proper sacrifice, or Abel offered the proper sacrifice, and Cain offered the fruits of his labor, which doesn't work. Next one is Nimrod. He was the 13th from Adam. 13 in the Bible means rebellion. The first time you see this word, it's associated with rebellion. It's in Genesis 14, verse 4. Nimrod means leopard, which is a type of Antichrist, Revelation 13. Nimrod, son of Kish, in Hebrew adds up to 666. He was a mighty hunter. Obviously, he was a mighty hunter of men. He was a bowman, Revelation 6:2. He becomes a Gibberim, which is, in the Bible, means that he somehow corrupted his genetics in such a way through witchcraft or some sort of sexual ritual magic, and became a Nephilim, basically, what they call a Gibberim. He was a giant. He creates a one-world religion and government. He makes a tower to reach heaven. And Babel, in the ancient Assyrian and Sumerian languages, actually means gateway to God. Just kind of like what they're doing today at CERN, the LHC, whose logo just happens to have 3 6s in it too. Now, see, this apparently was a body that they found of Nimrod, and some people claim that they have his head and are planning on genetically cloning him to bring him back to life. I guess so. Maybe he can rule the one world order. So it's very possible that Nimrod may very well be this Antichrist, but we'll have to see. The next one is Pharaoh. He tries to wipe out the Hebrews. He blasphemes God, saying, "I know not your God, neither will I let your people go." He's involved with plagues being released upon the world. He is judged and destroyed by God in the Red Sea. The next one is Balak. He tried to curse Israel by a false prophet named Balaam. He turns Israel to idolatry. That's in Numbers chapter 25, which is involved in Baal worship. And between these three, you have an unholy trinity, Balak, Balaam, and Baal from Moab. Next one is Adonai-Zedek, one of the 5 kings that tried to destroy Israel, and Joshua. Joshua fights him in Joshua chapter 10. Joshua is a type of Jesus Christ, and his name is almost identical to Jesus' name in the Bible, which is Yeshua. He is attacked by above by hailstones and by the sword. It's a type of Armageddon-like battle. The sun and moon stand still. Again, you see the sun and moon standing still. You see hailstones. All that happens in Revelation at the very last days. He eventually hides in the cave with other kings, but just like in Revelation 6, where the kings of the earth hide in caves. And eventually he's hung on a tree, which is a head wound. You see this head wound type thing showing up in Revelation 13, where the beast being wounded by a head wound but comes back to life. Next person is Sisera. He takes Israel captive. He fights a great battle in Megiddo, which is Armageddon. The stars of the host of heaven actually is involved, and he is also killed by a head wound. He gets a tent peg smashed into his head. So, right now, the next person here is Abimelech, and he reigns over Israel. He's killed by his own brethren. He's represented by a bramble or a thorn bush, which represents Christ. So he's a false Christ. The thorn bush, remember, Christ had a thorn bush put on his head. Thorns represent the curse put upon nature when Adam and Eve sinned. The acacia tree, or the thorn bush that Moses also spoke to, is also with the exact same wood that they used to build the tabernacle. This is all, it would not surprise me if Christ himself was hung on a beam made of this wood. It all seems to go back to the curse. He eventually is killed by a head wound. A millstone is dropped upon his head, and he is killed. Our next person is Saul. He also reigns over Israel. He is anointed, so he's a false type of Christ. He persecutes David, who is a type of the real Christ. The Spirit of God leaves him, and an evil spirit then comes to torment him, which the Antichrist will have an evil spirit. He disobeys God on multiple occasions. He even goes so far as to kill the priests of God, and eventually he kills himself. Suicide is also a thing that you see very commonly in Antichrist figures. Now, people claim that that Adolf Hitler actually ran off to Venezuela, but it would actually go a lot better if he actually was in fact killed himself, which would go along with the concept of an Antichrist. When all else fails, take your own life. Next one is Goliath. He's a giant, a hybrid Nephilim. He blasphemes God. He fights David, again a type of Christ. His armor has a number 6 associated with it, and he is also killed by a head wound from David when a stone hits him in the head. So, again, hailstones falling from the sky to kill the wicked, death by stoning, all goes back to this concept. Absalom. His name means father of peace, and of course we know he comes in peacefully, just like the Antichrist was supposedly coming on a platform of peace. He tries to overthrow David and kill him. David flees to Judah, where David has to flee, just like the people in Israel will have to flee to the mountains during the time of the abomination of desolation. He is hung up by the head and stabbed. Okay, he got caught by his hair in a tree, as you see back here. He got caught by a tree, and eventually he's stabbed and killed. He is thrown into a great pit, which is like similar to the bottomless pit in Revelation, and he goes to his own place. Only 3 people in the Bible go to their own place after they die. So I believe that this place is the bottomless pit. Absalom is one of them. Balaam, the false prophet, also goes to his place. This is the last time you hear of him. And you also see it again with Judas Iscariot. So this right here is actually the tomb of Absalom, and it is traditional when you pass by this place that you're supposed to throw stones at it for the wicked thing that Absalom did by trying to overthrow his father. Next one is Solomon. He reigns over Israel. He comes in peacefully also. He later converts to idolatry, and he's also involved in building the temple. It just so happens also that Solomon, who did not apparently follow the rules of Deuteronomy. There's rules that a king was supposed to follow, and I believe there's 5 rules that a king is supposed to follow. Solomon managed to break every single one of them. Having too many horses, not turning to idolatry, supposed to write yourself a copy of the Torah. I don't think he did any of these things. He is also paid 666 talents of gold annually. So again, he's associated with this number. Now Solomon obviously turned back to his righteousness at the end of his life, but he's still a type of Antichrist figure. Next person is Ahab. He also reigns over Israel. He is into idolatry and turns the whole nation to it. He has an evil wife named Jezebel, who is a representative of a great whore in Revelation. He persecutes Elijah, the prophet of God. And he eventually is killed in battle, just like in Armageddon, in this picture of Elijah calling down fire, which we also see that the Antichrist and his false prophet will apparently do in order to deceive people. The next person on the list is Sennacherib. He takes Israel captive. He seeks to destroy Judah, just like the Antichrist. He blasphemes God. That's pretty typical of the Antichrists. His army is destroyed in one night by an angel of God. As we see, Christ will destroy the enemies in one day as well. And he is killed by his sons. So you see this thing happening where people are being killed by their own people. Nebuchadnezzar. he captures Judah. He burns the temple to the ground. I don't know if the Antichrist will necessarily do that, but he's definitely involved in desecrating the temple. He builds an image and forces people to worship it on pain of death. That will something the Antichrist will do in Revelation 13. He turns into a wild animal for a period of time. The Antichrist is also known as the beast. The next person on the list is Haman, and he seeks to destroy all the Israelites. He tricks the Persian king into signing an edict that he cannot reverse, that all the children of Israel will be destroyed on a certain day. His plan, of course, is thwarted. He seeks to be worshipped. He goes to the Persian king, and the Persian king, who had been reading a story about Malachi, how he had protected his kingdom, says to Haman, "What do you think I should do for a person who helped to, keep me in power and not let everything, what should I do to honor a man who deserves great honor?" Well, Haman thinks he's speaking of him and tells him, well, you should throw him a parade and put him on a horse and have the people praise him and stuff. And so a Persian king goes, all right, you go do that. The person I want to honor is Malachi. And of course it backfired on him. So Haman was thinking he was talking about him, but yeah. Eventually he is hung on the gallows. He tries to build a gallows to kill Mordecai, and eventually himself and his 10 sons are hung on these gallows. So he also dies by a head wound. The next person is Herod the Great. He refurbishes the temple. It wasn't as beautiful as Solomon's temple, but eventually he spent all this money and time to make it absolutely beautiful, trying to gain favor with the Jews, which didn't work. He tries to kill Jesus when he's a child. So you see this concept of trying to kill Christ. You saw Pharaoh do it with the children of Israel. He was trying to destroy all the Israelite men. Herod does the same thing. Like I said, he massacres children. Although it's not mentioned in the Bible, he attempted suicide on several occasions, but eventually he dies of a painful sickness. So he's also a type of Antichrist. Okay, let's see. You see him here talking to the wise men. The next person is Judas Iscariot. He is a follower of Jesus, just like Satan once was. He betrays him, just like Satan did. He is dwelt in by Satan, so he's actually involved with it. You don't see anybody else being possessed by Satan himself but this man. He is a devil. Jesus refers to him as a devil in John chapter 6. He is also killed himself by hanging, a head wound. So, again, he also goes to his own place, Acts chapter 1. And the last person on the list is Herod, Acts chapter 12. He kills James, the apostle, by the sword, and he eventually throws Peter in jail, so he's a type of persecutor of Christians. Okay, and so he is supernaturally destroyed by worms. So you see these various different forms of the Antichrist depicted in these different people throughout the Bible. So these are the type of things that you should actually look for. Again, he's going to be involved in temple worship. People who come in peacefully. He'll be involved with the number 6 or 666. Eventually, he'll die of a head wound of sorts and come back to life. He'll try to basically, he'll build a statue or some sort of image. It may not be a statue, perhaps maybe a clone or something actually physically living that will cause people to worship him. So he will eventually desecrate the temple, like Antiochus Epiphanes did, where he sacrificed a pig on the altar. So some people think he might be from the tribe of Dan. I suppose that's possible. That's the only tribe that's not mentioned as being redeemed in Revelation chapter 7, as being part of the 144,000. So we said this is how you can identify them. Look for these markers, and hope you guys enjoy this lesson, and talk to you soon. God bless.